Well, hey everyone, and welcome to episode number 56 of the Other Six Podcast. My name is Chad Boak, and I am your host. Join me once again in the studio, my co-host, our worship pastor, the man who sanitizes his change and calls it money laundering. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Collins. Matt, how are you today, sir?
I'm good.
It's good to see you, man.
It's impressive all the things you can come up with, man.
Absolutely. It's just for you, buddy. I do that just for
Thanks.
you. Also joining us in the studio today, our lead pastor.
Are you the worship pastor
Let's
now,
go.
man?
You're switching up. I like it.
You do not
Switch
want
up
me up
Sunday.
there.
You should try that sometime.
We absolutely
Matt will
should.
preach and I'll lead worship.
I think that's a great idea. We
All
should
right,
absolutely do
let's
that.
do it.
All right, it'll be real short and a lot of worship.
That's right. Our lead pastor, Adam Bishop. Adam, how are you today, sir?
We could sing. I'm trying to think of like the song we would actually sing.
Right.
So I got a couple of good kid songs
Okay.
that we
Yeah?
could get. Yeah, like we used to do like a kids camp and student camp.
Yeah.
Fun songs. I don't know if the adults would get into them.
What,
you know?
what?
Like Pharaoh or?
No.
Yeah, man, bring that back,
Yeah,
man.
I could sing Of Your Love Forever and just
Heck
repeat it.
yeah,
there you
man.
go.
No, see, that's a great song.
Yeah.
So,
Bring
you,
it.
You got my brain
If you
all
did that-
chasing that.
Bringing down the fire, man.
I'm doing good, and we will not be doing that Sunday. at
Okay,
some
that-
point.
that's not
You
happening.
ever
Okay.
seen these churches? And maybe you're listening. You grew up in a little church like this. They'll do like Youth Sunday,
Right.
Where they give the
Yeah.
entire service to the teenagers and
Yeah.
let them run
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
service.
yeah.
Yeah.
So God bless those little churches, because when I was 19 and 20 years old, that's how I got a chance to preach.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I would work at these camps in the summer and get to know all these youth pastors and youth groups and do their devotions. So they're one Sunday a year. They get Youth Sunday, a little church of,
Right.
60, 70 people. Sometimes it's real big, like 100 people.
Yeah.
And they'd pay me like just enough money to cover my gas to drive from Tennessee down to South Georgia, and get to preach. And I'm sure they were terrible sermons. I mean, they had to be awful, because I'm 19, 20 years old, just nothing but passion, baby.
Right,
Just,
right.
Right.
probably making every, mistake you can make in preaching. And those people were so good to me. I wish I could track down some of those folks. I mean, I know where the churches are,
Yeah.
but just to thank them. I'll tell you a funny story about that one time.
Yeah.
So I'm at this little church and I preach, and they have Sunday night church. So I got to go back and preach on Sunday night. Like, I'm doing it old school,
Look at you.
And so in the afternoon, they were like, well, we're going to have a big pool party. All the students are come together, we're going to eat hamburgers and hot dogs. I'm like, yeah, awesome. So we're hanging out, and I'm hanging out with all the adults. And there's this like gigantic dude who's like a volunteer in the student ministry. We're in the middle of nowhere, Georgia.
Yeah.
And he's like, boy, how old are you? And I was like, I think I was 20. I was like, I'm 20. He goes, 20? I got underwear older than you.
You need to get some new underwear,
Yeah, no
sir.
kidding,
I
man.
wasn't sure how to respond. I didn't know
Right.
what to say. Like, congratulations.
That's
I
awesome.
didn't know if that was a good thing. I didn't know if I should apologize.
Yeah.
I'm
It was
sorry.
really weird. So, but on those particular Sundays, the good people in those churches would put up with bad music and bad preaching.
Right.
We will not subject our people to one of those Sundays. Not saying Matt couldn't preach,
Right.
but it'd be bad music. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
it'd
So
be-
we will not do that.
be a little rough.
That's really
Yeah,
cool,
so-
though, that you had the opportunity to do that. They would actually let that Sunday happen to
Oh, yeah.
invest in next generation. That's
Absolutely,
fantastic.
and that's
Yeah.
what they were doing.
Yeah, that's really
and those
cool.
pastors. I think now, all these years, because now being a pastor, that like the youth pastor would walk in his office and go, "Trust me, it'll be fine. I know he's 19, and we spent a week with him at camp, but let him preach here at the church." And the pastors would say, "Okay," and
That's
they would
awesome.
be encouraging, and I love that. So
That's
yeah,
really cool.
definitely benefited from that. But that has immediately popped into my mind,
Right.
when you accidentally flipped up ours.
Yeah.
Like, oh boy, that's how it would be here.
Yeah.
So we won't do
It'd
that.
be great,
I-
man.
We won't
yeah.
do that.
It'd be great.
So, gentlemen, have a good weekend. I know you.
Our youth football team, Jacob's team, won. So first
First
victory
win?
of the year
Okay.
down in Greenville, Alabama. Not Greenbow, Alabama.
Greenbow.
That's Forrest Gump.
Wow.
Greenville.
Greenville.
And a good little town, small town America football. Our Pike Road Patriot varsity team won
Yep.
Friday night, so that was awesome.
And Eufaula.
And Eufaula, Coach Rigby got to beat his old team, so
Yeah.
I love that.
That must have been interesting for him, kind of going back to.
Well, we talked about it on the coaches show last
Yeah.
week. I mean, how often as a coach are you coaching a game where you've influenced every player in the game?
Yeah, that's true.
both teams, So for him, I know that was rewarding, but once the game starts, you want to win.
Right,
You know?
right,
So
right.
so he won Friday night. The Patriots won Friday night. Jacob's team won Saturday. We came home, had a good rest of the day, beautiful weather, so it was great.
Yeah, it was great.
weekend. What about you, Matthew?
Yeah.
We didn't do hardly anything,
Oh,
and that
nice.
was great.
Those are nice.
You guys,
Those
yeah.
are really relaxing weekend.
Yeah. We spent the weekend cleaning. We're going out of town next week, and so we have someone coming to house sit and dog sit for us. One of Christy's friends, and because someone else is coming into our house, that means that everything must be clean. My whole theory is like, shouldn't we clean it while we're there and have a nice
let
house?
them
But
clean it, man.
It's fine. Although
Worked
I
this
will
out
say,
well.
when we got done cleaning, I was like, our room's bigger than I thought it was. So that's that was kind of nice. But no, so we spent the weekend doing that, and then obviously everything's Sunday, and we had our information meeting with our student ministry Sunday night. Had a bunch of parents come out, all the leaders
Nice.
come out, and we. I'll talk about this real quick. We announced that December 28th through the 30th, we're taking our student ministry up to Strength to Stand Conference in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. It's going to be great. They have fantastic speakers there, but I'm really excited about the music. Rush of Fools from Montgomery is
Nice.
leading worship.
No way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yep. So I'm hoping to text Wes, because we know Wes, and to be the cool youth pastor that like gets them to meet the worship band.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah,
play
yeah.
that card.
Yeah.
He would do that too.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely.
he definitely would.
Absolutely will. And so, Wes, if you're listening, just a heads up. And
Grant.
that's right. And then there's 2 concerts, one each night, and they've got KB, which, if you don't know who
Come on.
KB
Yeah.
is, he's
KB is
fantastic.
awesome.
Yep. And Crowder the second night.
No
David
way.
Crowder.
Ooh,
Yeah.
gonna bring the
Wow.
house down,
So
man.
our students are going.
Our students are going, and I've already had several adults telling me I volunteered to chaperone.
Say,
I'm
I
like,
have a student in the student ministry.
right.
Adam's
That sounds
going.
amazing.
That's right. So no, it's going to be a blast.
There's a waiting list for the parents that want to go.
I'm like, yeah, you can apply, but no,
Yeah,
it's
I
great. We've
appreciate
got
that.
great folks. And,
Give me the middle school boys. I bet you'll say yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a good trip, and so we're excited about that. Excited about all the other stuff happening. But I mean, just an incredible weekend here at the church. We continued our message series from stress to blessed. Yeah, I keep getting things backwards.
Yeah,
today.
we
I
don't want to
apologize.
add stress
Blessed,
to people's lives.
blessed to stress
Blessing.
now.
That's right.
Blessing.
So yesterday we talked a lot about time management, and I want to just kind of, at the beginning of your message, at the beginning of this conversation,
I
let's-
didn't call it time management.
Sure.
I called it blessing with our time.
blessing with our
Yeah.
time. There we go. Well, I want to dive into why
Seminar
talking,
in time management.
That's good.
why talking about this is so important. Like, does God really care how I spend my time as long as I'm not spending it like sinning? Like, does God care about that?
It's a pretty low bar, Chad.
Yeah, right.
God's
Way down
happy
here.
with how I spend
Does it
my
really-
time as long as I'm not sinning.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I said it kind of up top in the message that how we spend our time is how we live our life. So if you don't like talking about time, let's just talk about life.
Sure.
Okay. So life is a gift, and you only get to go around once. There are no dress rehearsals. And the way that you have a quality of life is evaluated and measured and really determined by what you choose to do with your time. And I think so many times we forget that. And it's easy to just say, well, I don't have enough time, or I'm too busy, or I've got too much on my plate, and almost let time happen to us instead of us being proactive with our time.
That's
And so
interesting.
when you're
That's good.
proactive with your time, ultimately what you're doing is you're living your life on purpose. And for believers who have actually been given something called the Great Commission, everything about our life should have purpose. That's really the only reason we're still here, Chad.
Right.
I mean, our real home's in heaven.
Right.
So we're just taking up space right now. And far too many Christians, that really is all they're doing. Just taking up space, breathing air, eating food, and consuming resources. And you've forgotten the only reason God still has you here is for a purpose. So this is now a stewardship. The rest of your life is a stewardship with what you're going to do with the time God's given you, because it's so short. In light of eternity, your time here on earth is really short. It should be intentional. It should be purposeful if you're a Christ follower. We don't live like the world. The world can just kind of wander their way through life with no purpose, no focus, no intent, just make it all about themselves. But for those of us who are followers of Jesus, we've actually been called to a much higher standard, and we do have a purpose. And if you want to get down into the details of whether or not you're actually accomplishing God's purposes for your life, just show me how you're spending your time. And it'll be really easy to see if that's actually happening. So I think this is one of the most important things that as Christ followers we can actually talk about.
That's good.
That's really good. So you had quite a few points.
How about 10?
Yeah, you had 10 points about, our time management.
If someone says time management one more time, I'm gonna come across this table. We were talking about blessing with time.
Blessing with
These
time.
were ways. I literally
okay.
I put up a slide.
Okay.
It said 10 ways to move from experiencing stress to blessing in your life. There's suggestions.
Sure.
Okay.
So ways that
Yes,
we
thank
can
you. All
manage.
right.
So
I jest.
The first being that we need to get better at planning.
Yeah.
So there's some people that are better at planning than others. So for those that lack the planning skills, what can we do to practically help that? What are some ways that we can do that better?
Yeah, so let's talk about a greater principle at work there. I really like the way you asked the question, and I'll give you a compliment after coming after you. So I like the way you asked the question.
I'm gonna get under the table.
So sometimes it's easy to see something that another person does and assume they must be naturally wired that way. I'm not naturally wired that way.
Right.
Therefore, I don't do that well, and they do it well. When in reality, most things that you observe in somebody else's life, they're good at it because they tried it, they practiced, they failed, they messed up, they kept going,
Right.
they tweaked. It was a learned skill. So I try to approach life from the perspective that most things can be learned. These are skills that can be learned. And so if you're naturally wired to be a good planner, that's cool, but you're probably in the minority. You know, most people, that's a skill they're going to have to learn.
Right.
I'm not naturally wired to be a planner.
Neither am I.
At all. It's something I've had to learn how to do. I've had to acquire that skill, and I'm actually pretty good at it now. I think some people would probably look at me and go, "You're not naturally a planner," because most of my life is super planned. Well, the biggest reason most of my life is super planned is to alleviate stress.
Yep.
Because here's what I know about life. I can't control it, and neither can you. You know, we make our plans, but the Lord directs our steps.
Yeah.
So I can have everything planned, and then life will just laugh at my plans.
Right.
Okay? And being a pastor, what I know is that we're supposed to be available to serve, love, and shepherd people. And sometimes that doesn't go according to plan. Sometimes crisis happens at the least convenient time. So if I can't plan the things that are predictable, I'll never make myself available when people really need me.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And that principle holds true regardless of what you do. You don't have to be a pastor, but if you're a parent, if you're a spouse, okay? If you're someone that someone else relies on a team, maybe at work or at school, if you can't plan the things that are predictable in your life, you'll never be available to the people you care about when they need you most.
Yeah.
And so there's a heart motivation to this as well. But if you don't think you're good at planning, that's okay. It is something you can improve upon.
Yeah.
And I think a good place to start is, you know, try to start just planning every day. Just try to plan every day. You know, get up a little earlier, look at your day, plan it out, and see how it goes.
Yeah.
And if you get comfortable with that, maybe you plan 2 days. And then you just take little baby steps, and eventually maybe you can plan out a week. You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
For years, when we lived in New York, Morgan and I had a weekly planning meeting. It sounds so romantic. So it was on Monday
is.
nights, and we would, you know, after we ate dinner, and we put Sam would have been a baby at the time. We'd put Sam to bed, and we would sit down for an hour because, you know, she's flying to Atlanta with Sam to see her parents, or I've got to go on this trip to this conference, she's got this going on at work. We just had to get better at planning out our life because we kept forgetting to tell people stuff. So sometimes a family planning meeting, you got kids doing stuff. Oh my goodness, right? Everybody's got a bunch. So if you can try to plan as much as possible, it will help alleviate stress.
Yeah, I mean, and folks are busier than ever these days, it
Right.
seems like. So I think that's really good advice to sit down and have that planning. I mean, that's a good practical tip. So I was having the conversation with someone the other day about how sometimes it can be really difficult for me to kind of, you know, disconnect from work and not feel the stress because I love what I do. I
Right.
feel like it's important work.
Right.
And I know that so many folks that are listening to this feel that exact same way. I mean, doctors, nurses, first responders, business owners, teachers. I mean, even like during the lockdown, we learned how important like grocery store workers were and folks that drove trucks and all these kinds of things. So all of our jobs are important. We all have things that we feel are important. We enjoy our jobs. So my question is this: how can we disconnect and not feel stress when we feel like our work is so important? How can we disconnect from that?
Yeah, I like the way you frame that. So many times we think that disconnecting from work is only something we should do if you don't like the work you're doing.
Right.
So I totally resonate with what you're talking about there because I love what I do. I mean, I love getting to be a pastor. I love working in a church. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think the question you have to ask yourself, and there is a seasonal component to this. So let's just kind of say that straight up. The season of life you're in is going to really dictate a lot how this looks in reality.
Okay.
But the question you have to ask yourself, and I'll throw myself into this category as someone who loves what I do, okay, is are you going to do that at the expense of, now fill in the blank? I mean, I could go home every day and keep working and actually enjoy it. not feel stressed, not be bothered, not think I can't believe Vaughn Forest Church make me do all this work. No, I could get back to people in our church much more quickly.
Right.
I could be a better pastor. I could please a lot more people. They go, wow, our pastor, when we text or email or call him, it's like he's back. It's almost like he was waiting to hear from us. And man, he's amazing. And I would get a lot of praise for that.
Right.
And do all of that. And I love it. And this is what God's called me to. And there's purpose. And hey, only one life to live, all the things. And all the while, my wife and boys would rot on the vine. And they would wonder, why does Dad love what he does more than us? So it's not a question of whether or not you enjoy what you're doing. It's a question of whether or not you're putting that ahead of what actually matters most, and that's the people in your life. So the reason why I disconnect from work isn't because I don't love the work. It's because Morgan only has one husband. His name's Adam. My boys only have one dad. His name's Adam as well, which is good. Vaughn Forest Church could get another pastor. Your employer could find somebody else. Now, I love getting to be the pastor here, and I'm grateful that I can be the pastor here, and I don't feel the pressure to feel like I have to be the pastor at the expense of my family or be at the family at the expense of the church. Vaughn Forest is really kind and gracious with me when it comes to those things. But the greater principle at work here is anytime you're choosing to do one thing with your time, you're saying no to other things with your time.
Right.
So you can only spend time once. So if you're spending that time at home on work when you need to be spending that time at home with the people you're at home with, over time, you're going to create a wedge between yourself and the people that matters the most to you. So now look, I mean, one day when Morgan and I are empty nesters, there will be more availability in our schedule for me to do things for the church in the evenings.
Right.
There just will be.
Yeah.
I'm just not in that season of life right now. But, when we don't have kids at home, I'll do a lot more stuff church-related on weeknights.
Right.
Because that'll be the season of life I'm in. And sometimes a church has a pastor that's been in that season of life, and then the next pastor comes in and is not in the season of life, and the church has a hard time adjusting to that, right?
Right.
It's like our last pastor used to have people over his house every Thursday night. It's like, well, the new pastor's on the football field on Thursday nights. And so there's a little bit of a, give and take with that. But yeah, try to look at it, not, I love what I do, I want to keep doing it. It's great. I get it. I'm with you. But like, at what expense is what I would say.
And I really like what you said there about knowing the wisdom of what season that you're in your life. And sometimes I think that can call for a little self-examination, taking a look at it, taking inventory, and then based on that, kind of helping decide how to spend, that time.
Yeah, and ask your spouse, what their preference is. I mean, when our boys were little, like Sam and Jacob, Morgan, she kind of freed me up because she just said, honestly, if you're not around in the mornings, like, don't take this the wrong way, but nobody notices.
Right.
It's kind of fine. But if you're not here, come bath time and bedtime, like it's kind of hard, as having a 2-year-old and a newborn. That's when you're super helpful. And that was great feedback, because if I had extra work to do, I would do it early, not late. If I had a meeting, I did a lot of 6 a.m. meetings in that season of my life. And the people in the meetings weren't happy with me at all. But, it's like, okay, we'll figure it out. So yeah, ask for some feedback from your spouse and stuff like that.
That's good.
Dude, that's really good advice. So let's talk about the quadrants that you had on Sunday morning. So what do they represent, and how do we use that tool to help us avoid stress in our life?
Just try to, as much as possible, move things into a space in your life where you're proactively choosing to do them and the important things rather than the urgent things. So everybody has to pay bills. Don't wait till the day the bill's due to pay the bill, because inevitably that's when somebody will throw up in your car, or the boss will keep you late at work, or So if you know something has to happen, just do it sooner than it has to happen.
Yeah.
Don't live everything in such an urgent manner, because that's actually what creates stress in our lives. Is when we find out something has to be done and we don't have enough time to do it.
Yeah.
If you find out something has to be done, even if it's a really big thing, you've got time to do it.
Yeah.
It may not be a lot of fun, but you can still get it accomplished. And so just don't put things off. Go ahead and get it done. Instead of waiting until the last minute, you're just inviting unnecessary stress into your life.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the principle of creating margin that you were talking about.
And the quadrants, I guess, are represented as tasks, right?
Well, they're kind of categories that, as much as possible, and y'all know working here, it's pretty common language around here. I'll just say things like, well, we're operating in a really urgent quadrant with that. Like, how can we do that, sooner? So, like, let's just take this podcast, for example. So when we're done recording this podcast, like I have no idea what happens from that point forward. I really don't. All I know is on Tuesday mornings, like it's available.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So that's kind of our rhythm. We try to get this out on Tuesday mornings. Well, we record this early on Monday afternoons. If we recorded it at 4:00 on Monday afternoons, we would now be creating more stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, Jonathan and Matt and Chad, I'm sure all of y'all do stuff with this, especially Jonathan. Like they probably, want to leave the office by 5:00 and get home.
Right.
But if we were recording this at 4 and at 5, I walked out the door and went, see you guys. Y'all will be like, well, convenient for you.
Yeah.
I've now created stress in your life.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's just do it earlier in the day. So it could
Yeah.
be something as simple as
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Doing something a little earlier, doing something a week ahead of time. And as much as possible, how many things about your life can you move into that category?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Yep.
it's not being done at the last minute.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now, that kind of leads me to my next question. Some people say they're better under pressure. I operate best when I'm backed into a corner. What would you say to those people?
I'm wired that way too.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, and that was my reasoning for a very long time for not operating this way. And what happened is it got to a point where the stress was too much. So I've lived out a lot of this.
Sure.
So, I think I said this, I don't remember when I said this. So I said this at some point. Like oftentimes we don't change when we see the light. We change when we feel the heat. A lot of times you don't change anything in your life till you absolutely have to. We're so
Right.
stubborn and we love the way we do things. And then eventually life's feedback begins to tell you, you got to
You gotta
change some
change,
things.
yeah.
okay?
Right.
So the stress just became too much and balls started getting dropped and I wasn't getting things done. And, it was affecting my performance at work. And, at some point, and this would have probably been about 15 years ago, like I realized like you can't operate this way anymore.
Right.
So again, I've been the beneficiary of some incredible mentors and bosses and coaches who have helped me with these things.
Sure.
And I said that to one of my mentors, who's still a mentor in my life to this day. At the time, he also happened to conveniently be my boss. But I said to him that, like, I really do work better under pressure. And he said, I get it. He said, but here's what you failed to realize. Like, you can actually create your own system that would force that pressure out of you. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, okay, well, give your self-imposed deadlines. If you're telling me
Yeah.
you work best when you have a deadline, then just create deadlines that you force upon yourself.
Sure.
And then don't cheat those deadlines.
Right.
Yeah.
So that principle is what I do like with my sermon writing. So, working under pressure for me is here's the deadline. The sermon has to be written and there is no wavering on that.
Right.
Now, I can't ever let in my head, well, it's still 4 days to go. Do you have to preach this thing? No, I can't think that way.
Right.
So what I'm doing is I'm still operating that way where I'm like, okay, I got to get this done. I get this done. Like it kind of gets the juices flowing. My brain's focused.
Right.
But it's just 4 days ahead of time instead of the day before. Okay.
Right.
So if you're wired that way and you actually kind of like, and I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But you can actually then choose to impose upon yourself deadlines.
Right.
What I was doing is letting the organization or letting the church or letting, if I was getting a degree in a degree program, letting the professor give me the deadline.
Right.
And what he said is, no, create your own deadlines. And then create your deadlines in a way where you've allowed margin.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I was like, it was a great lesson. And it's one that I've put into practice now for a long time. And it has greatly benefited me.
Yeah.
But I understand the question because
Yeah.
I'm kind of wired
Yeah.
that way too.
I think also when you wait to the last minute on things, you really limit your options on sometimes what you can do.
Right.
I'll use the example of like if you wait till October 30th to get a Halloween costume, like there's only one
You
or
can
two
still do
left.
it.
Yeah, you can still do it.
Might not be what you want.
That's exactly right. And so I know lots of times, whether it's with work or with like I've waited to the very last second, and then my options are very limited with what I can actually do, rather than it being the best thing that it could actually
Same
be.
thing with Christmas shopping.
Yeah, exactly,
So
exactly.
apply that way of thinking to other areas of
Yeah,
your life.
I like that.
I like the Halloween. You should do it this year and see what you wind up with.
Please no. A little too old to trick or treat, man.
Yeah.
Did I tell y'all about my Halloween costume last year that got vetoed by my family?
No, but I would
No.
very much like to
Oh,
hear
this,
about it.
this story's never gone public, so
Here we go.
exclusive. All right, so we're gonna go.
Exclusives
We're
with
gonna go
Adam.
trick or treating last year, and we've kind of honestly we've done pretty well. If I can just take a minute.
Okay.
So Sam and Jacob a couple years ago went as Lloyd and Harry from Dumb and Dumber. I found the tuxedos online,
The
the orange and blue,
orange, yeah.
the hat, the top hat.
Yeah.
They ordered them, and they wore them. And we're living in the waters at the time, and it was fantastic. So the whole night we're walking around, like all the kids are like, "Who are you for Halloween?" And all their parents are like, "That's amazing!" So
Take all the candy.
Parents were getting their pictures made with Sam and Jacob. It was
That's
fantastic.
awesome.
It was so great. So we've kind of set some standards because we've moved out of the waters now,
Sure.
but we still have lots of friends in there, and that's where we still go trick or treating.
Sure.
And it's just glorious. It's
Yeah, yeah,
amazing,
yeah.
right? So I feel like we kind of have to have some fun with this, and we meet up with some friends. So I thought it would be awesome because Sam and Jacob, we kind of at the last minute had decided, like, let's kind of retrofit some costumes y'all wore when you were really little.
Okay.
And they got into it because we made them look kind of updated and fun. And basically it was like a hot dog and a pizza slice.
Okay.
And so the way I sold them on this idea, I was like, no, it'll be great because there's this old Saturday Night Live sketch where Chris Farley is Lunch Lady.
Lunch Lady Land,
So
yeah.
I was like, we'll go around singing Lunch Lady Land, and I'll be the lunch lady, and y'all can be the pizza. So I pulled it up on YouTube, and we watched it, and they thought it was just the greatest thing ever. So Henry was going to be Adam Sandler with the guitar,
Yeah.
and we had the pizza and the hot dog, and I was going to be the lunch
lady, yeah.
So I went to some store here in Montgomery. I don't even know what it was, and like I bought like a women's dress and like a wig and like all this stuff. And the poor sweet gal who was checking me out at the cash register, she's just like trying to look straight ahead and not like make eye
And you're like, it's
contact
fine. I'm a pastor.
with this eye contact. What church is that? That's
right.
Just make up a name. So Taylor Road. So yeah. That's
What's up, Daniel?
So Daniel, I wouldn't do that
Sorry,
to you.
Daniel.
So I thought this is awesome. So I come home and like, dude, I nailed it. I
Yeah.
looked just like Lunch Lady. Now, there's no photos. There's no proof of this.
Oh.
I came around the corner because our bedroom's on the first floor. So I came around the corner. My whole family's in the living room. And I'm thinking they're all going to like slowly rise and applaud.
Right,
and tell me
right.
they all instantaneously went, no. No. Like they would not let me out of the house.
Dude.
Morgan's like, Adam, there's no way on earth. I'm like, Morgan, you're just don't worry about it. And Sam and Jacob are like, Dad, we don't know how to tell you this. You can't wear that. So it got vetoed.
What?
So,
Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah. So I did not plan on sharing
Wow.
that story today. But so yeah, your
So-
point is well taken.
Look what you did, Chad.
Yeah.
Now, I assume you guys are going to step it up again this year. So
Yeah, and it
No?
won't be that. I
Okay.
think that has forever been vetoed.
Fair
but
enough.
it would have been awesome.
Yeah, it would have
I think
been.
it would have gotten really good reviews in the
I love
waters.
it. I love it.
Oh man, yeah.
What were we talking about?
Switching gears
Shifting
here.
gears back. Yeah.
So I'm wasting everybody's time with my stupid stories. Sorry.
No, it's great. So you talked about prioritizing properly each day.
Yes.
You've used a phrase before, eat the frog.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our staff
Yeah.
trainings,
Eat the
we
frog
talked about that.
first.
Yeah, eating the frog.
Can you explain that phrase, and then how can we apply that to prioritizing each day?
Yeah, I don't know who created that phrase. Brian Tracy's the first person I ever heard say it. Brian Tracy, he's not a Christ follower as far as I know. He's written a bunch of books and stuff, but it is a time management principle, Matthew. There you go. So we can use your phrase.
I didn't say it.
That if for whatever reason, and again, whoever made this up, like they have issues. They should go get them checked out, right? That if someone told you, hey, you have to eat a live frog today, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
that you should do that first. Because if you didn't, throughout the entire day, all you'd be thinking about is, I gotta eat that live frog
Right,
at some
right,
point
right,
today.
yeah.
So the principle there is if you have something that you don't want to do that first.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you're in a meeting and you know, like, hey, there's something we have to address that didn't go well on Sunday, we can say, hey, let's go ahead and eat the frog first.
Right.
You know, what
Yeah.
happened with that? And we talk about it. And instead of, like, we do a meeting for 55 minutes,
And
in the
then,
last
yeah.
5 minutes, I'm like, oh, by the way, let's talk about this problem. And then everybody leaves the meeting with kind of a downer
Yeah.
because it's like, we did something wrong. So, eat the frog first. If you
Yeah.
got something you don't want to do, you go ahead and get it done.
Yeah.
If you got to go to the DMV, go stand outside the door before they
Rope
open.
drop the
Be
DMV.
one of the first
Yeah.
people to get the little ticket
Yeah.
and wave your ticket in the air like you just don't care when they
Right.
call you up there, and then find out you didn't bring one of the 17 documents you need. But like
You weren't wearing blue shoes.
Was that the voice of experience I just heard?
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
gosh.
Anyway, sorry.
I could tell so many stories. But here's the biggest takeaway from DMVs, and I've visited them in multiple states.
Sure.
God bless the people who work there.
Right?
Because
They gotta deal with
they have
this.
to put up with a lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So we give them a bad rap, but most of the time the people there are super kind and gracious.
Yeah.
It's just the nature of the process.
Yeah.
Not much fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you got something you don't want to do it first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's homework or something at work or a tough conversation, just go ahead and get it out of the way.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
you're going
yeah.
to sit there and dread it the entire time.
Think about it all day, yeah.
Recently, we had to take Ava to get a shot. We didn't tell her she was getting a shot, and then we just had him do it right off the bat. And she's like, "Why didn't y'all tell me?" I was like, "Did you really want to have to worry about it for a week?" And she was
Right.
like, Good call, Dad.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of the same
Wow.
principle,
Yeah.
applies there. So one of the things you talked about was not being lazy. And
Sluggard.
Yeah, that's right.
You
Sluggard.
sluggard.
Go to the ant, you
That's
sluggard.
what the Bible says.
That's right. Was that
It's
Proverbs?
Chad's favorite
Yeah.
verse.
Yeah, absolutely. So my question for you is, we talk about disconnecting, we talk about rest, we talk about all these things. How can we know the difference between when we're being lazy versus being restful?
Well, that's an easy question for me to answer.
Okay.
But I only know the way I live my life.
Sure.
So my life is super structured. And what's structured in my life is rest. So if it's not time that I've structured for rest, there's something I need to be getting done. So if I'm not being productive in time that I have allotted to be productive, I'm being lazy. That one's not real hard for me.
Okay.
So my life is, there's not an unaccounted hour for my day. So that's how structured my life
Wow.
is. But what's in that structure are times for rest. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So if I've, for example, yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoons are not exactly a super productive time for me, but I still try to get something done.
Right.
So sometimes we have stuff at the church. Sunday is a work day for me. It's not just a day to preach and go home and be lazy.
Right.
I try to be productive.
Right.
So, I was like, all right, what do I need to do to be productive during this time? And there was something that needed to be done around the house, and so I got it done,
Okay.
So I would just say if you've got time that's allotted to do something, then spend that time doing something. And if you have time that's been allotted to rest, then give yourself permission to rest.
Right.
There's always things that still need to be done. And so you have to be just as intentional about going, no, I'm going to leave it alone. I'm not going to mess with that today. It'll still be there for me tomorrow. I have set aside this time for rest.
Yeah. And that can be difficult to do, right?
It can be. And
yeah.
I would go so far as to say that unless you're intentional about it, it won't happen.
That's good.
Because life will always give you something that needs to be done. Always. There's always
Right.
something that's saying, I'm urgent. I'm urgent. This needs to be done.
Yeah.
Well, if you're intentional, and for me that day is Fridays, about rest, and then give yourself freedom with what is actually restful for you. So what might be work for somebody else might be restful for you. So like, for example, I worked all day Friday outside. I mean, I like labor intense work around my property, and it's incredibly restful for me.
Right.
So if you're in a career or a job that engages your mind, when you're resting, it's really good to engage your hands or your body.
Yeah.
If you're in work that engages your body, construction, or you're outside, or when you're resting, it's probably good to engage your mind. Yeah, kick back and read a novel or watch a good movie. But for me, my mind is engaged with all of the different responsibilities I have, with all the stuff that I do. So when I'm resting, I'm typically doing something that's going to engage, me physically.
Right.
And that actually, there's all kind of studies on this with what it does in your brain and the chemicals and all that. So that's actually super restful for me.
That's
And
good.
so you just have to know how you're wired. And, in past seasons when I didn't live on 6 acres of property, those would be the days we'd go hiking.
Yeah.
Right.
Or those would be the days I'd go skiing. Or
Right.
those would be so staying active physically
I got you.
while resting and somebody else may go, well, that didn't sound restful at all.
Right.
That sounds exhausting.
Yeah, it sounds
And
like
work. Yeah.
Well, that's because maybe they're wired differently. So
Right.
give yourself permission with what's actually restful for you.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that I'm pretty interested in, is like the natural rhythms of people. And you talked about, this kind of leads into the next question I have. You talked about being a morning person. So why should we maximize our time in the morning? And what would you say to somebody who says, I'm just a night owl, I get more stuff done at night?
Yeah, I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
that is my natural wiring. And that wiring worked well till I was almost 30. So yeah, I mean, first 30 years of my life, I would not have even engaged this topic. I would have just
Yeah.
said, well, I'm a night owl.
Yeah.
And that's just how I get things done.
Yeah.
And, that's how God wired me, and that's how I'm productive.
Yeah.
And then it's so funny. Like, we moved to the city that never sleeps, New York City, and that's when I realized I
Yeah.
needed to become a morning person. So the biggest just practical implication is that for most of us are going to live our lives in some type of rhythm where things are going to be asked of us in the morning.
Yeah.
I mean, very few of us are going to become, famous singing in a band, traveling on a tour bus, playing concerts, and
Right.
sleeping in a bus till 2 p.m. and then going and do another concert.
Yeah.
Very few of us are going to be Major League Baseball players
Right.
that, we play till after midnight and then we get to so there's a very niched group of society that
Yeah.
they probably work more at night and they sleep in the mornings. For the most of us, you're going to be in some type of rhythm of life, whether it's a career, whether it's a job, or whether it's raising kids who have to go to school in the morning,
Right.
where more is going to be asked of you in the mornings.
Sure.
And so at some point, I think part of just growing up is just start to cooperate with that.
Yeah.
And so that's what happened with me. It was the demands that were being put on me at work and the time I was having to get there and just the nature of needing. I just needed to change that rhythm. And it took about 3 months for my body to adjust. And once my body adjusted, like it has never gone back.
Yeah.
So now I wake up early naturally and I engage things in the morning very naturally.
Yeah.
And at night, my brain kind of just starts to shut down.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's something that can be changed regardless of what your natural wiring is. And I'm suggesting that if you're going to make a change, make the change to the morning because you'll actually get more done, which will alleviate stress in your life.
Yeah.
I'm a morning person. I want to become a night owl. That's probably not going to help you at
No.
all.
Right.
So you can get a lot more done in the mornings.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. Like you kind of shifted to the morning, so like creative thinking happens primarily when you're more relaxed, and so you shifting earlier kind of put you in a mindset to be a little bit more creative, maybe earlier. And then like the way we're wired, like task oriented in the morning, getting tasks done,
Right.
things done. So like you making that shift kind of pushed that a little bit earlier. There's tons of research about that, and it's really interesting.
I've definitely seen that play out in my life. So it would match that.
And would you say that the same principle applies? So like Christy used to work night shift at the hospital. Is it the same principle applies to kind of just the first part of your day, whenever that may be, that you're the most rested, like that's when you need to be doing that. So is it morning or is it just kind of the first part of your day, or yes is the
It's
answer?
the first hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
I read one time the first hour of your day is like a rudder on a ship.
Okay.
That
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
sets the course for the rest of the day.
That's good.
And so I think, if whatever you do for those first few hours every
Right.
single day is going to really set the trajectory for the rest of the day.
And
Yeah.
obviously for the majority of us, that is the morning time. So
Yeah.
that's
And I think
good.
what we typically do is go, well, what's the latest I can sleep and still
Right.
get everything done?
Right.
Right.
And what I'm suggesting is no, don't think that way. Like get up well before that.
Yeah.
So if you don't have to be up till 6, start getting up at 4. Someone says, I could never do that. Yes, you could.
Yeah, you
You
can.
could train your body to do it.
Yep.
So that's all I'm trying to say is like just maximize time. Go to bed a little earlier, get up a little earlier. You'd be shocked how much you could get done.
Yeah.
Just in 2 hours time before everybody else in your house wakes up, or the time you could get stuff done before you technically have to be awake. That's all I'm suggesting.
Yeah, that's good. So I loved what you said about fighting perfectionism. And, one of the things we've discussed on this podcast is about how, contentment is something that is incredibly underrated in today's society. But I think there's so many folks that always feel the drive to make things perfect or make more money or get that next degree or just keep going. The mountaintop is never enough. We got to keep climbing the mountain. And so I guess my question for you is, for that person, whatever it is that's driving them, how can they find, contentment? Is that drive a bad thing?
No, as someone who is wired that way.
Sure.
I am super ambitious. I'm super driven. And for a long time, didn't know what to do with that in ministry. That doesn't fit the profile of a typical pastor. And I really wrestled with that for a long time until, again, some good mentors, good coaches, good men of God had to remind me, well, God doesn't make mistakes. So when he created you to be you. And if that's how he wired you, then that's how you need to live. Okay. So for those of us who are ambition and driven and motivated, there's a shadow side to that we've got to be really careful about. And I've had to be mindful of that over the years, and I've probably had a few missteps along the way where maybe I got a little too ambitious, okay?
Sure.
So I get the question because it is how I'm wired. So if you're wired that way, I think the thing you have to be super intentional about is building in the discipline of contentment and gratitude. Contentment and gratitude. They will not naturally come to you.
Right.
What naturally comes to you is ambition. And God needs more ambitious people in the world who are being ambitious for good purposes.
Right.
But what you have to make sure you're also doing every single day is verbally, and I do this in my prayer life, verbally talking to God about the things you're grateful for, verbally telling God out loud, I am content in this season. Chad, I have big dreams for where Vaughn Forest Church can go and what Vaughn Forest Church could be in the future. But I am super content with who Vaughn Forest Church is right now in this moment. And that's a heart issue that I only know whether or not I'm lying. That's between me and the Lord, okay?
Right.
So like between me and the Lord right now, like I'm super content. Like I love the people in this church. I love everything about our church. But I'm not satisfied. I think God has more. I think God wants us to see our church accomplish more kingdom purposes in the future for the name of Jesus, not for the name of On Forest Church.
Right.
But build in the discipline of gratitude, build in the discipline of contentment. And at all times in your prayer life, be doing that while also continuing to dream. Dream big, go for it, be ambitious. But you've got to couple that with some contentment and some gratitude, or you will be stressed, you will be discontent,
Right.
you will deal with anxiety, and you'll be unhappy, and God doesn't want you to live that way at all. So you can be ambitious, but you got to work on the contentment and gratitude piece.
Yeah, building in time to celebrate some things that are going
Celebrate,
on.
we talk about that, the discipline of celebration,
Yes.
Good.
instead of just moving on to the next thing. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so because I have to do that because I'm like that, very task oriented.
Yeah, same.
So one of your points was that we should stop doing some things. So how do we know what we're supposed to stop and what we're supposed to keep doing?
Is it taking you an inordinate amount of time? Is it taking you it's just not a reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
So I've had to learn how to really get better at building things. So like Morgan bought this, I don't even know what it's called. I honestly don't know what it's called. It's a little piece of furniture that has doors, and you open them and you stick stuff in it. I guess it's like a shelf or it's at the end of the hallway. I don't know. I think we're going to put a lamp on it. So she bought this.
You had to build this.
She bought it at Costco, and it came in a box, and I got to put it together.
And you had to buy 20 of them because it was at Costco.
So,
yes, exactly.
Now this one actually had all the pieces.
Okay,
and
that's
so, there was a time in my life, if I can just be honest, that it would have been better to have called one of you or somebody else in our church and just say, "Hey, man, can you come over here and put this together for me, and I'll grill you a hamburger when you're done."
Right.
Because the time it would have taken, it was just ridiculous. Well, I've worked at it now, and I've gotten a lot better, and I put that thing together yesterday in no time at all.
Right.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Are there some things like someone's like, "I'm going to save money and paint my house." But if you fall off the ladder and break your neck, have you really saved anything? So,
No.
it's like there's some things, go ahead and spend the money and save
Right.
yourself the time.
Right. Yeah,
Okay? I need to go out on a date with my wife, but, it costs too much money for a babysitter. No, that's not an expense. That's an
Right.
investment.
Yes.
So someone says, it just takes me, every single Friday, it takes me all day to clean my house. Well, could you stop going to Starbucks and save that money and maybe pay a cleaner to come in and do it at about 75% of how you think it should be done? I could never do that. Okay.
Okay.
Keep doing it.
Keep going to
and
Starbucks,
losing
man.
every Friday of your life.
Right,
So
right.
that's all I'm saying. Like, are there some things you're doing that perhaps you could do a little differently? So
Right.
I'll tell you the big thing on my list right now is mowing my grass. So I love mowing my grass. It's awesome. I have this gigantic 0-turn mower that's really fun to drive. And what I'm realizing is we're about to get into a season of my life where I'm going to now have to hand that responsibility over to Sam. And Sam's old enough, and he
Yeah.
can do it, and I could train him and teach him. But honestly, I don't really want to because I like it. I like mowing the
yeah,
grass.
yeah.
But I was talking to Morgan about it the other day. I was like, if Sam's out here mowing the grass, I could be doing all this other stuff while he's mowing the grass. So I'm going to stop doing that, and Sam's going to start doing that probably in the spring. We get to
Yeah.
next year. That's all I'm saying. Like at all times, are there things that just take a lot of time? Could somebody else do that? Could you pay somebody a little money to do that? And I just think it's helpful to constantly just be evaluating those things,
Right.
which is one of the things you do on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is God's way of saying 6 days in the wrong direction is enough.
That's good. Yeah.
So how long
Stop
are you
it.
going to keep
Right.
going in the same direction? Well, if you don't ever pause, you'll just keep going in the
Yeah.
same direction. So this is what I do on the Sabbath.
Right.
I ask myself, did you spend your time wisely over the last 6 days? And then I look at my calendar for the next 6 days. And sometimes I'll go, why is that on my calendar?
Right.
Who put that on my calendar? Oh, you did 90 days ago.
Yeah.
It's like, we're not going to do that. That's
No.
not a wise use of my time. So the Sabbath is a good way to evaluate and plan and ask yourself if there's some things I need to do differently.
Yeah.
That's
That's
good.
good.
Well, for the record, if you ever need to scratch that itch to mow grass come the spring, you'll feel free to come to my house
Okay.
and you can
Yeah,
help me stop doing some things. So
Okay,
that would be,
I'll
that'd be
load up the
wonderful.
mower and come
See,
on
it's,
over.
It's a
Take
win-win
all
for all of us.
So you stopped mowing our grass and started mowing Chad's. Like that
They don't only takes like 20
That's
minutes.
not what we were going
Right,
for.
yeah.
The drive takes longer to do
Oh,
it.
absolutely, especially a zero turn or something like that.
Yeah.
So I really like your point about social media, how social media is basically just a waste of time. And I've seen studies that talk about how when we're on social media, sometimes it activates the same parts of our brain that like addiction activates, alcohol addiction,
yeah,
tobacco, those
yeah.
kinds of things. So my question for you is, what do we do if we find ourselves addicted to social media? Like, how can we break that addiction?
Well, I don't know. As honest as I can be, because addiction's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
And I would never want to act like I'm somebody who's giving instructions on how to break addictions
Sure.
in your life. So if you're really addicted to something, you need to go see a professional therapist, a professional counselor.
Right.
And there are people out there, we can help get you connected with someone, because this is a real thing.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a real thing. And what you're talking about with our brains is a very real thing. And so if that's the category you're in, nothing I'm about to say will help you.
Okay.
So let's just make sure we're clear.
Sure.
Yeah.
If it's just something that it's like, yeah, I'm wasting too much time with that.
Yeah.
I've never really thought about it this way. But as you were asking the question, I felt like this answer kind of popped into my head. So we're going to say that was the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, there we go.
But boy, I'm hesitant to say it out loud because it's going to sound mean, and that is not my intent.
Mm-hmm.
But I think one of the things you can do is be intentional about who you follow.
Mm-hmm.
So you have some control with social media. So when you open up your phone, who are the type of people that you follow? When you're scrolling through your news feed, those are the types of things that you're seeing.
Right.
So I have almost 5,000 friends on Facebook because I'm super popular. Because I've been on Facebook since 2004.
Right.
So I was one of the early adopters with Facebook. So over the years, and 18 years in, I'm almost at my limit, okay? I unfollow a ton of people. I don't want to unfriend them because that would be rude. I mean, that's the equivalent of being a jerk in our but sometimes the things that they're talking about or the things they're saying, it's negativity.
Right.
It's gossip. It's false comparison. It's extreme political views. It's it's not life-giving. It's not soul nurturing.
Right.
And I just unfollow them.
Yeah.
I just hit that little thing and it gives me the option and I can unfollow them and I don't need to know anything about their life. All it's going to do is put me in a bad mood. All it's going to do is get me frustrated.
Right.
So when and then on Twitter, like I follow a lot of people I can learn from. A lot of thought leaders, a lot of professors, a lot of pastors, not all pastors, but some pastors, some different news organizations. I like to try to read from a variety of perspectives. But if I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see somebody's like that, it's gone, you know?
Right.
Same thing with Instagram. So I think a good place to start is who are you choosing to let feed your soul and your mind? That's your choice. You don't have to follow a bunch of celebrities. You don't have to follow a bunch of people that you used to know from high school. So just be super intentional about who you choose to let feed your mind and your soul through social media.
Well, and just as a side note, if you're ever typing out a response or a Facebook post or anything like that, and you have to stop and wonder if you should post
Put it to a draft.
you shouldn't post it. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that one out there. That's for free.
Put it to draft and then come back to it and go, is this worth it?
Yeah, exactly.
The answer's no.
The answer's no.
Probably no.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk about the tips you gave for creating margin. You said divert daily, withdraw weekly, and abandon annually. So what does that look like practically in our day-to-day life, or annually or weekly?
Just impose it on yourself. Given what you do, like what's realistic. And look, we've got surgeons, we've got doctors, we've got specialists, we've got people who do unbelievable things. So this is going to look different for everyone, okay?
Yeah,
sure.
So in your rhythm, when is it that you can kind of say, all right, that's when we shut it down? That's when I intentionally have a diversion. That's when I'm no longer going to let things that create stress in my life, dictate my life. You know, so be proactive about that. And then you might be in a season sometimes where that's just not happening to the extent that you would prefer. You're like, I wish I could divert for 3 hours a day, but I only get 30 minutes a day, okay? Yeah, we all live in those seasons, okay? So the biggest one in that list, I think, is the withdrawal weekly, the Sabbath. By definition, a Sabbath is a set 24-hour period of time where you don't do anything associated with your primary occupation.
Right.
Okay, so you just intentionally choose, I'm going to make this day my Sabbath, okay? Now, if you're a doctor, maybe you're on call. The Pharisees talked to Jesus about the Sabbath, and Jesus was like, well, look, if a sheep gets out of the sheep pen, you're going to go get the sheep. Like, if I'm on my Sabbath and there's an emergency at the church, like, I'm going to have to address the emergency.
Right.
So we're not legalist about this, but through intent, you have that day. Now, biblically speaking, and this is where our society gets this wrong, the Sabbath is not a day that you just like fall on the couch after exhaustion from overdoing it the previous 6.
Yeah.
Biblically speaking, the Sabbath is a day of rest in preparation for the next 6.
Yeah.
So that shift helps, okay? But here's the biggest thing it does. And if you've never tried this, I would challenge you to try to put this into practice over the course of the next 90 days and then get back with me and see if you find this to be true for you. It forces you to manage the other 6 days of your week a lot better. There are no loose ends because like, I've got this day that I'm not going to do these things. So that's why I'm getting up earlier, or that's why I'm staying up a little later, or that's why I'm not, goofing off at work, or that's why I'm eating a quick lunch at my desk and getting right. Because I've got this Sabbath that I'm committed to keeping. And then, if possible, if there's a way to abandon annually, not everybody can go on vacations, and we're sensitive to that. But maybe you save up, and try to just get away for something. We don't go on vacations because I don't want to be at Vaughn Forest.
Right.
Like, we don't go on vacations because I'm tired of preaching and I don't want to preach this Sunday. Like, we go on vacations to get quality time as a family and to build memories with our boys. I want my boys to take their families on vacations. So I got to model the way. So that's why we do vacations. Most of the time we get back from vacation, I'm more exhausted than I was before we left. Okay?
Right.
So, the vacations aren't always a place.
If you've ever been to Disney,
they're not vacations. They're just trips.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there's intent and there's focus behind that. And so we try to be intentional about that with our kids. So again, one day we have stories to tell and memories to share. And if we don't build those memories now, we're not going to have any stories to share.
Right.
And I want them to do that with their families. And I can tell you, like, one of the things we did on Friday, so if you want to get practical, Friday's my Sabbath. It's super convenient since Morgan works here at the church. It's also her Sabbath. And so we have one day a week to ourselves. It's glorious. It's amazing. And we spent most of that day talking about spring break in March. And we made a decision what we're going to do for spring break. And that decision was made by the end of the day on Friday. So we're trying to be intentional about looking forward. And then next Friday, I can tell you, because again, structure, we're going to talk about June. Okay, what are we doing to do next June? We'll take 1 week. We're going to go somewhere in June. So we're trying to get ahead on that because of our life and just the frenetic pace. But with that type of intentionality, the hope there is that we're building those memories with our kids and, trying to model the way for them.
That's really good. I really like what you said about how, part of the Sabbath is preparation for the other 6 days of the week. And then I thought, hey, that's the name of the podcast. So,
there you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
That works.
We could have called it Sabbath, but that was already taken.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We were going to get buried on the Apple Podcast.
Darn it.
Yeah, there you go.
Black Sabbath, isn't that an old band?
Yeah, man.
I don't even know what they sing. Do they sing good music or Christian music or bad music?
Not Christian music.
Okay, bad music. Don't listen to Black
Secular
Sabbath.
music, rock and roll.
Okay,
that's
all
right.
right.
Yeah.
That's the devil's in the beat, Chad.
That's right, exactly. Well, gentlemen, I've enjoyed this conversation, and I'm really enjoying this message series, and we're going to be continuing it this
I was
Sunday.
told that as a teenager, by
What's
the way.
that? That the devil's in the beat?
As a Sunday school teacher. Anyway, that's fine.
They play them darn guitars.
You play it backwards, there's a subliminal message.
Oh my goodness, that's a whole
We're
different
sorry,
podcast.
Chad. We're trying to wrap it up.
No,
There we
it's
go.
fine.
My bad.
So what do you guys think about music? No, it's good. But no, I'm looking forward to continuing it this Sunday morning from Stressed to Blessed and 9:30 to 11 a.m. On campus or online. If you're traveling, you can join us, vaughnforest.com, Facebook page, YouTube channel. Looking forward to that.
Marriage. We're talking about marriage on
What
Sunday.
brings us together today.
And I'm going to start my message that way. It's going
That's
to be
awesome.
glorious.
Yeah, I've always wanted to do a wedding that way, just to walk out and immediately say that at the beginning.
They will kick your butt out.
Yeah, no bride's ever gone for it. The grooms are always like, great,
Yeah.
sounds
Sounds
awesome.
It's not
awesome.
going to happen.
Yeah, that's right.
This Sunday, though.
Yeah, this Sunday.
Yeah.
Break it out.
Marriage this
Walk
Sunday.
out and say that. Marriage.
Woo, wow. Okay, sorry.
There we go. Well, anyway, gentlemen, I've enjoyed this, and we appreciate you joining us today. So on behalf of Adam Bishop, Matt Collins, Sound Guy Jonathan, and myself, we will see you next time.